Happy Monday, everyone, or whatever day you're listening to this. Episode 12 of the Environmental Podcast.
Yeah, so back into the spring swing of things. It's not spring.
No, it's still winter.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about automobiles and cars and transportation and maybe some planes and trains.
Yeah, so basically how people get around and how that relates to sustainability.
Yeah, but first, Alicia, how are you doing today?
I'm okay. Kind of sick. I woke up, was on my way to church,
You were
and
kind of
canceled
sick.
it. Thanks. That's exactly what everyone wants to hear. But anyway, I ended up going out for coffee with my cousin, which was nice. And then I've been doing school readings and projects all day. Whoop.
Fun, what kind of projects?
It's a project for the class that we're both in, environmental something. And it's basically you have to take pictures of things on campus, sustainability issues, and write about them. And one of them you have to pick and do like a research question on and try and answer that question.
Do you like that project?
Sort of. I like anything where you can do something remotely creative, like take a picture or have some kind of liberty with the formatting.
My classes this year are or this semester, should I say, are very intensive. We're in that same one, and it seems like it's going to be very research intensive.
Well, it's a research class.
Oui. Je n'aime pas.
Oui.
I kind of like getting the introduction into academia and scientific publication and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But since I don't really plan to do it, it's a lot of me practicing for something I have no intention on doing.
That's hard. It's kind of how I felt with like accounting and such.
That's how you feel about this as well? You're not going to be releasing any scientific papers?
It's true. I feel very similar. I'm just trying to make another connection. Anyway, I really like all my courses this year. I'm doing like one that's about ecology and spirituality, and like then I'm in marketing, you know.
Cool.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was going to say, even for my film classes, which have a similar focus on academic publication and authorship this time, like original research, as much as I like film, and I have some topics in mind which I would like to research, learn more about, and perhaps one day publish. We were talking about it. It doesn't seem like it's something that's on my horizon, so I find it difficult to give the classes the requisite amount of attention.
Yeah. I feel like lots of people feel that.
Do you?
To an extent, yeah. People don't really know what they want, or like if they're going to be doing research and stuff, it's probably going to be far down the road. It's not going to be as soon as they graduate. When they graduate, they're going to go into something more entry level that pays, because I feel like academic research maybe doesn't. I don't know.
I think a lot of people, everyone goes into their program or their degree for a different reason, but usually it's because they enjoy doing the things which are taught in that program.
Yeah, makes sense. Anyway, on to a story of cars, maybe.
Okay, are you going to outline your screenplay for Cars 4?
Yeah, that's what we were really thinking today. We're going to call the episode Cars 4 after the... Is it a Disney or Pixar?
Cars 4? Yeah, it's a Pixar. Lightning McQueen.
Yeah, that series. But then we decided against it. But anyway, I have a good...
Because we were going to get copyrighted.
I don't know if that's how that works. But maybe we would have. Or maybe they would have stole the podcast.
I bet they would have. If Disney bought the podcast, though.
No, we can't sell out to Disney.
True.
No. So anyway.
What story were you going to tell?
Story of Cars. So kind of when Cars hit the turning point and now everybody has a car.
Okay.
So I'm telling you about the turning point.
Back in the 1700s.
No. So pre-World War I, people owned cars, but people were a lot more reliant on streetcars and public transit.
Where are we talking about? In
America.
What's a streetcar?
A streetcar is a car that's like, it's kind of like a train, but it runs like down regular streets. So there's tracks and it's attached to this thing up top which gives it electricity.
Like a tram?
A tram, yes.
Okay.
So there were 17,000 miles of streetcar in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's essentially zero.
Just novelty tracks, probably.
Yeah, exactly. One in probably like San Francisco or something. Anyway, so people were really reliant on that. They were subsidized by the government. Fares were really low. And the tram companies were responsible for keeping the roads all in good condition, like around them, so like the concrete around them, which was when cars started coming to vogue. They were like literally they were forced to pay for the roads to be in good conditions for their competitors, which kind of fed into a cycle of them being phased out. In addition to that, during the war, a lot of the during both wars, so World War I and World War II, a lot of the automobile resources were
put elsewhere?
Put elsewhere, yeah. So you couldn't even get replacement parts for your cars. You couldn't get a new car if you wanted to. So people were reliant on these public transit up until the end of World War II. But then at the end of that war, all of those resources went back into the automotive industry. And Henry Ford, at the beginning of the 50s, he said, I have a dream that like every American with a living wage will be able to afford a car. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning of the decade, there were less than 40 million cars on the road. And at the end of the decade, there were almost 70 million.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So like he basically achieved it.
Okay. Well, now he has anyway.
Well, yeah. So, or registered vehicles. I don't know. Anyway, so he really like basically doubled the amount of cars on the road. And then at the same time, the public transit industry of like the streetcars kind of collapsed because the fares had been held at an artificially low rate of 5 cents. Oh. But then when the money started to be worth more, they couldn't raise them because everyone it said they felt like it was their birthright that they would be able to afford transit for 5 cents. So mm-hmm. They couldn't raise the fares, so they couldn't afford to keep the roads in working condition. And on top of that, cars were allowed to drive on the tracks of the streetcars. Okay. So they couldn't get around anywhere. And then this subsidiary of General Motors started buying up all the streetcars and dismantling them.
Taking away the competition.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they also were doing that so they could put in buses, which is still public transit, but it's a motor which runs on oil instead of these ones which were electric. So they were doing that so they could, start selling their buses. And no bus system seems to be as efficient as the streetcars were so far.
What do you mean as efficient?
Because there were so many of them, and they were like kind of laid out in the most logical way. And they were in like every town, no matter how small. Like even my hometown had one. Not that I'm from the States, but my tiny little town had a streetcar that ran through like all of the different parts of the county.
Until when?
Until...
You don't know.
I mean, it's within like my parents' lifetime.
Okay.
It's like last 40 years.
Right.
So very that's kind of a bit story. Of a background.
Nice historical intro.
Yes.
So Henry Ford had that dream that every American with a living wage would be able to afford a registered vehicle or an automobile, and we kind of have the opposite dream.
Yeah.
We want to dismantle Henry Ford's vision.
Yeah, we want to start buying up all the cars and then putting in better public transit.
Putting our money back into the streetcars.
Yeah. And maybe not streetcars, but like they were on a better track. They were more communal.
Better track. But what this story, I like this story because it kind of embodies a wider shift. And I was saying when you mentioned saying this story on the podcast, I thought, what about other countries that aren't America? But then we kind of said, well, a lot of countries are just kind of modeling after America, especially in their city design, in their lifestyles. The American dream is kind of entwined with having your own car.
Exactly. That's what I was kind of getting into with this story, but then I figured we could kind of shift off at this point. You know a bit about the American dream and the suburbs and development?
No.
Oh.
If you want to talk more about that, for sure, go for it.
Cool. So after everyone got their cars, these people that now had a bit of money after the war and resources to invest into housing and so on, they realized if we build houses outside of the city centers, it's way cheaper because the land is more affordable. And people will move to them. They can move to them because they have cars, so they can commute from the suburbs to the city center for work. And so these houses just started popping up like crazy, and people were then buying houses. And they also would, like, when they built these suburbs, there were a few other things attached to it. It was like they would give them a car, their students would get free tuition. Like, it was just these crazy deals. So people were like, wow, I'm going to move there. And that's when the baby boom kind of happened. There was like 70 million people born in that decade or something.
Okay.
So like, yeah, a ton of people were born, but that like really stressed the resources because people were now had to drive in and out of the city centers to get groceries and stuff. And then like supermarkets and malls started popping up in the suburbs, and then consumption skyrocketed. So like the cars kind of accelerated the current sustainability crisis that we're in, or environmental crisis, I think.
Well, not even getting to that point yet. Seems to me like they kind of were the reason for urban sprawl.
Yes.
Like towns building outward instead of upward.
Mm-hmm.
Why is urban sprawl bad for the environment? Because all my classes say this.
I would say for a number of reasons. One would be deforestation. So
oh yeah, of course. So the basic thing, it's taken up a lot of land.
Yeah, taking up a lot of land.
Mm-hmm. As
cities
we spread
used to
outward.
be surrounded by wilderness, but now it's more like wilderness surrounded by city.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, cutting down trees, the emissions of people having to drive.
Commute.
Also just more demand on resources and waste management, I think, because it's not centralized.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's like you have to try and figure out how to go pick up people's garbage, go service their water lines, get them cable.
Makes
so like
sense.
that's a lot of, I don't know, I think it's just way more demand on resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I like the story, because it's very symbolic of how our built environment is was built in an unsustainable way, and that's why it's so hard to reverse that now, because
Mm-hmm.
the systems which we exist in, especially the physical structures, were built all in a time before this environmental consciousness boom.
Yeah,
Before that was a big part of any kind of planning.
exactly.
Which is why it frustrates me when even modern planning is unsustainable.
Yeah, like pretty recently there's a few highways near us which were built just for the purpose of making us look more like a city. So they're these overpasses that just like crisscross in the city.
Right.
And they have no purpose.
We should talk about that. Well, I guess this is the car episode, but it's probably more like the city episode.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was thinking when you were talking about that, especially the really American ideal, like people say the prototypical car city is Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
because it's impossible to get around. It was built for cars.
Yeah.
And I read a book a couple of years ago which was about city design, and it was talking about this, and it was talking about how recently there's been the push for walkability,
Yeah.
which is actually how things used to be
Exactly.
before the 1900s. And we live in a place which is very unwalkable.
Yeah, very sprawled.
Very sprawled,
'Cause-
and I guess there's winter is an aspect in that as
Yeah,
well.
but I mean, like when I moved, or growing up, I lived like a few hours away from the city, and I remember coming up, and it was like if you wanted to go to Starbucks, there was one Starbucks in the city. If you wanted to go to any store, there would be one, and it was in the city. But now that I live here, and so like over the last 20 years, there's like the main city, but then there's like these 5 different business parks that popped up around, and each one
business
has their
parks.
own Starbucks, their own Costco, their own, but it's like they're within like a 5-10 minute drive of each other.
Yeah, business parks are basically an even uglier and much bigger version of a strip mall.
Yeah. But they just have popped up, and I'm like, why? Like, no one can walk to them, so like it just means people need to have
not
cars.
just walking to them, but walking even around them. It's terrible.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know why those exist. I have a big issue with business parks. But like, I think it's just to say,
I like amusement parks.
yeah, I feel like it's just to say, oh yeah, we're investing in our infrastructure. It's like that's just stressing your infrastructure more. Maybe invest in public transit, in building high rises. I don't know.
Fill in the gaps. Make things more dense if you're insistent on growing and building.
Yeah, don't have just a 10-minute link of highway in these 5 different directions.
That's America. I mean, that's North America. We're in
Yeah.
Canada, but that's how things are built here. It's very
Yeah.
strange.
I know. Weird to me.
Yeah, it's built for long stretches of highway, driving, radio on, windows down, Bruce Springsteen up,
Yeah.
driving that open road, emitting those open fumes, and just heading to the business park.
Exactly. Yeah, because when I was researching that story this morning as well, it was like, because I knew most of it, but then I saw something and it was like, highways came before highway, like, legal vehicles and suburbs. So they just started building these highways just for the heck of it, just to like.
Well, a lot of,
reinvest
I
in
mean,
the economy.
they're always roads. They're always trails.
Yeah.
A lot of highways follow those routes.
Yeah.
The thing is, highways are needed here because every settlement, every town and city is so
Mhm.
far away from each other. There's just
Yeah.
acres of nothingness in between them.
There could be a train. There used to be the Trans-Canada train, but now it's the Trans-Canada Highway.
Yes,
Trans Mountain Railroad.
We'll be talking about trains later.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even coming from England, which is a way smaller surface area than Canada and the US, like way smaller, it's so much more dense.
Yeah.
Not saying it's much more sustainable, because it still relies heavily on highways, or as I know there, motorways and roundabouts and cars and driving. But there is more of a train system, and it's more doable because the country's so much smaller.
Yeah.
And there isn't so much space between towns. What kind of we're making this comment that there's so much space between towns in North America, but is there any fix for this? Because we know urbanization means that people are kind of flocking to urban centers anyway. So rural places, we both come from rural places, we know the population's really aging and dwindling. Yeah.
I mean, I really enjoy rural spaces because you're more connected with nature. But it's like, I feel like every rural place is trying to be urban in a way. So they all have a mall, they all have like 10 fast food restaurants. It's like, I feel like if you're going to live in a rural place,
I'm living in a cabin in the woods in Alaska.
Something like that. And I'm not saying I don't want people to have a worse quality of life, but I mean, people, like, if we want to have urban versus rural, there needs to be a genuine difference, kind of. And people
I like that.
Who live in rural areas shouldn't be zipping to the city once a week.
For everything.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do here.
Exactly. If you want to go to the doctor, if you want to do anything.
It's necessary to live.
Yeah. But I mean, if there was more of a return to just, like, community, I feel like there must be some way that we can fix that issue. I
mean, for sure. Well, let's just, because there's this big issue there's this big topic of, okay, we're making these observations and maybe we have ideas. The biggest topic is, how would we enact those ideas? But let's just say, pie in the sky, if we were designing settlements now in North America, how would things be? Let's say there were no towns. It wasn't inhabited
yet. It was just land.
Yeah, it was just land.
I feel like city centers are important to have a concentration of education, maybe, of healthcare, like experts and so on.
What kind of cities? Like, how are we designing them?
It'd be very cyclical. So, like, right in the middle would be like...
Oh, you mean circular?
Yeah, not cyclical.
Okay. Well, and cyclical economically and environmentally.
Yes.
Okay. So we're just putting a circle on the map.
Yeah, and that would be like the city. So it'd all be like pretty high buildings. There would be like, then right on the edge would
green
be
roofs.
Green roofs, yeah.
Yeah. So what's the environmental presence in the circle?
Like fairly minimal, I feel like.
Really?
Well, every building would be built sustainably. So like they don't have a high demand for.
True. I think there should be more. Our town really only has one park. And I love it there. It's my favorite place. What I was
thinking is that it would be surrounded by like a green belt, like they have in Ontario, and it'd be easy to get to. So it'd be like even a walkable, bikeable distance to the edge of the city.
Okay.
So it'd be like, say, 10, 15 minutes outside of the city center.
What about transportation within the city?
There'd be buses.
No cars?
No cars.
No cars allowed?
Mm-mm.
How do businesses get their resources to sell?
Yeah, so I feel like anything that needs resources would maybe be on the edge.
Okay.
And there'd be like...
Trains
that come in, and then maybe there's a truck that like brings it to the different places.
A driverless electric truck.
Something like that, yeah. So like trains come to the edge, you can get off the train. That's how you'd get between cities. Then you can get into the city and you can walk, bus, bike, anywhere, which would be way easier if there were no cars.
Right.
Because the buses could be faster, bikes could be more efficient. And then people could live either in the city in like high rises, or they could live in the wilderness on the edge.
Ooh. And that how would we ensure that they do that without just deforesting the whole thing? Permits, regulation.
Yeah, probably. Okay. And like they would still have access to all the things in the city, but they could live with more land.
Well, the trade-off, okay, you want to live there, but you can't drive into the city whenever you want.
Yeah, exactly. Like you need to make like a monthly trip in and get stuff.
Yes. And
like there would still be like emergency vehicles.
I was going to say that.
And maybe even there'd be like a healthcare shuttle.
Oh.
Yeah. That just popped in my mind.
I like
but it's not even a bad idea, is it?
So they have like Meals on Wheels. This would be like...
No, but I mean like each town could maybe have... It's not an ambulance, but it's just like a shuttle that goes even once a day. And if anybody needs to go into the city for like professional care. They could hop on the bus.
Yeah, but if it's an emergency, they can't wait for the bus.
Then they would get
An ambulance.
an ambulance, yeah.
Okay.
So every town would have like the shuttle and the ambulance.
Well, yeah, regular shuttles, as we have between airports and hotels here, or
Yeah.
around schools, we have them
Something like
to the gym, to the bathhouse, to
Yeah.
the hospital.
To the movie theater.
Exactly. All the key
Yeah.
spots.
No, but like something like that.
To the arcade.
It's going to take a bit more planning. You're not going to be able to zip in whenever.
I thought you just planned it all.
No, but I mean like in your day. Because we were discussing in our rural cities, we were like, what if there was a daily shuttle to the city that people just got on if they had to go up for an appointment or whatever?
Well, that's what trains are.
Yeah, so like if there was a train.
Yeah.
So we don't have train options. But then it was like, well, then I'm going to have to get the whole day off work. It's like, but they would adapt. Like your bosses would know.
Yeah.
Oh, you have a doctor's appointment, you're going to need the full day.
Yeah.
And it's like, it wouldn't be that big of a shift not having cars.
The culture, the lifestyle, the workplaces, people would adapt accordingly. One
And
of my favorite
it wouldn't
things.
be a massive shift. It would just be like a little bit different.
No, it's a massive shift.
Yeah, I guess.
But it's okay. We want massive shifts. One of my favorite things our teacher said last year in one of our sustainability classes was that when people have things, it tends to be that they don't want to give them up.
Mm-hmm.
So now people have the freedom of
Yeah.
a car, and I can go wherever I want, whenever I want.
Yeah.
What we're proposing is immediately against that. It's you won't be able to go wherever you want, whenever you want. That's too easy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unsustainable. What about electric cars? Why can't we just shift to that?
I feel like just cars impede the efficiency or the development of alternatives. Like, if there's cars on the road, buses can't be as fast or as efficient.
But why would they need to if we have electric cars? Let's say they're perfectly environmentally friendly.
Because you're going to need more of them. And they still use resources. They still need steel and
So do buses.
lithium.
So do
With
trains.
buses, you can fit more people.
I don't think the steel and lithium and all that stuff is met as a pressing environmental concern, though. We're just talking emissions.
Yeah, I guess so.
Here's my thing against environmental cars.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like cars.
No, that's kind of
And
why.
it's not just because of their emissions. I like this topic because it's quite a good example of our dual focus on this podcast, which is on the one hand being environmentally friendly, on the other hand returning society to a more authentic, more genuine, and more tactile sense of living.
Mm-hmm.
And cars are against that. We were talking about how we think cars are just these kind of unnatural mechanical beasts roaming the landscape. Like they don't look or feel right to me. And this is someone who's grown up with them. I haven't come from the woods or anything. Like I've grown up in a urbanized place with cars being central to my life. I've ridden in them a lot. And the more I do it, the more I dislike it. We've said this, we think in like 200, 300 years when people are looking back on photos and videos of this time, cars in every single frame will be that thing. They'll be like, whoa, those things were everywhere.
So we were camping this summer.
Yeah.
With my family, and we went to this campground that we'd never been to. It was like a national park.
Yeah, in the wild.
And we were like, whoa, this is probably the most like remote we've been.
Hmm.
And then every campsite had this massive SUV.
Yeah,
and
or
this
just
is where
a truck.
this kind of thought came up, and it was just like, if someone was looking at that, any other point in history, they're gonna be like, what?
What are those? But they're so normalized now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's a part of the family.
Literally.
You got me, the wife, the kids, the dog, the truck. Like that's on the family Christmas photo a lot, Christmas card.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I don't really like electric cars, because it still means things won't be walkable. It further removes us from ourselves, from each other, all those nice community-like things, at the expense of, oh, well, you can't go into the city whenever you want. Or, oh, well, you won't, because it's not just people going into the city. Some people want wilderness escapes. Well, you have to wait for the train in like 3 days or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I feel like the systems would get really efficient really fast if they were all electric trains and everything.
No, you'd still have to wait.
You'd still have to wait, but it might not even be a few days. It could be a few hours.
No, I mean, if you're trying to go somewhere really obscure,
Oh, yeah, I guess. What about planes?
planes are
No, it's
interesting.
not really the episode, but just like...
No, we can talk about it.
Okay.
I think planes can exist as long as cars don't. Because planes emit big time.
Mm-hmm.
but they're really expensive and people don't go on them as much as cars do. I should have written down the numbers, but I was looking at it this morning, the emissions of different forms of transportation.
Okay.
And it was like cars was the bulk of it, or just regular person transport. And then jets and planes were a little bit, I think they were like 5 to 10%. And shipping was a pretty huge percent. It was like 20.
So that just means like shipping
Cargo ships, cargo planes, all those things.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, so we definitely would need to be a bit more local.
A bit more, 100% more.
Yeah.
That's why we think corporations are the biggest obstacle.
Yeah.
Because it's not about me driving out to the mountains for a day. It's about us shipping our products from whatever big company and them coming here same day delivery. I think that's the biggest issue.
No, you're right.
When we're talking transportation.
Yeah, you're definitely right. Because when we are focusing on cars, we're focusing on walkability and community and stuff.
Right.
That's definitely just one aspect of it. But I feel like that would promote
degrowth, yeah. Economic degrowth.
Yeah.
Another conversation I had with a customer a couple of years ago when I was working as a cashier, he was talking about, because we were selling some local products, some local blueberry jams or whatever it was. And he said, these are the local ones, aren't they? He was buying them. And I was like, he was this very, very old gentleman. And I said, yeah, I think so. He said, oh, these are great. These are awesome. I'm going to buy some. And I said, yeah, they're, pretty good for the environment because we don't have to ship them, less emissions. And he said, well, actually, it's about putting bread on your neighbor's table.
There we go.
And he said it was such a genuine smile. And I thought, yeah, because, and that again is about being environmentally friendly and also being more, what's the word for it?
Human.
More human.
Yeah.
Let's live a more human existence. And I just don't see cars anywhere in that picture.
No.
Get rid of them. You said something about India banning cars.
Every second day. Like if your license plate starts in an odd number, you can't drive it on an odd day or something like that. So it's cutting half the cars, which is like millions, hundreds of millions of cars off the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also things like car accidents.
Yeah. Those are really scary.
Of course. I think we'd see more animals and nature in towns if there were no cars.
Yeah.
Because we live in rural areas. We see a lot of roadkill.
Yeah.
So it definitely contributes to habitat fragmentation because we're cutting through a lot of forest to build roads for cars, and also because cars will scare animals off a lot, push them away kind of.
So cars are just all around bad. We didn't really even say we don't like cars at the very beginning, but that's essentially what the episode is. No cars.
Well, I like going back to the movies. I like the movies, but I don't like the things.
Yeah.
The car movies, I mean.
No, I know what you mean. All the car songs, like the hot rod culture.
Yeah. Let's talk about the culture. The car culture. Because we were going to call this episode Canceling Car Culture. And I want to talk about the kind of seismic cultural change which would be required for any kind of progress when it comes to the built environment and transportation.
I feel like everyone that's alive today kind of grew up with the image of like jetting away, driving on the highway. So it's hard to, that would be one big shift that would need to happen.
Well, that's our idea of freedom. It's driving away. It's taking the road trip.
Because neither of us like cars, so we always are chatting like, it'd be so fun just to like go on a road
we say
trip.
Run away, but cars would be that's the
yeah, well, you can run away.
That's the vehicle literally for running away.
Yeah. Maybe
there just shouldn't be such a culture which we all want to run away from, but that's probably a different conversation.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, cars and how ingrained they are. We talked about them being a part of the family. There are these kids movies called Cars 1, Cars 2, and Cars 3.
There's the Fast and Furious movies.
Yeah, these are
very popular.
They're a key part of masculinity, modern masculinity. We can mention that. Hot rods, fixing up the car in high school. What else? Sweet 16. Get a car.
Yeah, that's literally the only like monument that I've had in my life.
Monument.
Not because like a lot of people, they have different ages when they like, oh, I'm this age, I get to do this, and this age I get to do this.
Oh, right.
But I just had I didn't even want cars, but I remember when I turned 16, my dad was so excited, got me a car. And I was just like, thanks. But it was the only thing that was like actually, even for my parents, like a big deal. Like, whoa, my kid can drive now.
It's a rite of passage.
Yeah.
It's a sign of adulthood.
That's what I was trying to get at. It's the only rite of passage really I ever had.
Yeah.
It's getting my license.
Another episode we're going to do in the future is talking about transitioning the youth into adults, and our culture's kind of difficulty with that, especially
they're having a hard time
in
doing so.
in modern times. But yeah, driving is a thing which is so pervasive, and again, it comes from the American dream, I think, and other countries adopting that, despite maybe not being built for it, kind of remodeling themselves around it.
Yeah, like the cars in the cobblestone streets in England. I was like, what's going on here?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It was just kind of weird to me. And same with even Quebec. They're driving on the cobblestones.
Places which look kind of old Europe-y, but have adopted cars just as much as everywhere else. Well, I was thinking even more like the Asian tigers, like Singapore and Japan. They have kind of an infatuation for old school Americana culture, be it like the muscle cars or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I find that interesting.
Yeah.
But how would such a culture how would we go about even reversing that? How would we go about shifting public opinion on cars, saying, no, they're bad, even electric ones?
I feel like it would just have to be in the movies and music and books. The things that people are consuming would have
highlighting
to be
nice
nature and community and love and...
You mean a kid's cartoon where the car is like growling as the villain?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Ferngully. That's why I like that movie. Avatar as well. It's basically the live action or the CGI Ferngully.
Yeah. It's just more of that. And there are definitely kids shows and stuff about that, but it's not the ones people are watching. People are watching the ones with the toy cars and
that's true.
So on.
Well, what about Thomas the Tank Engine? He's kind of like a toy train.
Yeah.
We need more. I like that though. It's very idyllic. The town or the island of I'm blanking, but he lives on an island.
Yeah.
And it's a very idyllic island.
Just trains.
Probably because there are no cars. But when I was reading about transportation and the emissions, it was talking about how trains are kind of a myth, in that they are always inherently more sustainable than cars. It's not always the case, because a lot of them are coal fueled. A lot of them are not. And even if they're electric, what kind of grid are you basing it on? So when we talk about trains in a positive light, we're talking about the kind of electric ones that they have in Japan, and those kind of high speed, those little magnet ones, which go really fast and are also really safe and reliable and electric. But we're also kind of talking about it with an implied parallel shift in our energy production in North America.
Exactly.
To more renewable means.
Yeah, like when we're talking about these idyllic cities, the buses are all going to be electric, and all the electricity is going to be
I was thinking that for the
renewable.
Cities. So we have green roofs, solar panels all over the place.
Yeah.
But it still needs more, so maybe some wind turbines outside the city.
Yeah, I think a lot of wind turbines and offshore, because offshore wind's really expensive.
Yeah,
but
and
I feel like
it's kind of developing tech.
But I feel like in the next decade,
wind is the way forward.
Yeah.
What do you think about tunnels? Talking about transportation.
I'm obsessed with tunnels. Kind of.
Really?
Yeah.
A little bit of a mole.
Yeah. Because I found it really funny when, what's his name?
Elon Musk?
When he was, like, developing these tunnel things, because I thought it was really strange that in my head I was just obsessed with tunnels, because on our campus, there's ones that you can get, like, halfway across the campus, and I think this is
old buildings.
The coolest thing ever. You don't have to go outside.
That's exactly what you think.
It's winter here.
That's exactly what you think. I don't have to go outside. I can stay in my slippers.
No. I hate being cold and damp and having to get in a car.
Spoken like a true indoor kid.
Love to be able to just walk in a tunnel to wherever.
Yeah, I mean, when I was talking about LA, he famously came up with that idea when he was stuck in traffic in LA, and he calculated or was thinking about how much time in his life he'd wasted in tunnels. I mean, in traffic, should I say. So traffic would effectively cease to exist.
Yeah.
We always say, this is very jumping all over the place, but we always say if we could have a superpower, it would be teleportation.
Yeah.
Because that would be, I mean, it would be crazy for travel.
I spend so much time even just going to the gym. It's like a 20-minute walk, and it's like...
Okay, now you're sounding whiny. There's
Sorry.
nothing wrong with walking.
No, there isn't, but I mean, like...
Do cars make you feel bad when you're inside them?
Yeah.
Physically?
I always get a headache.
Yeah, I get that. What about in buses?
Buses are still a little bit weird.
Yes.
But at least you're with other people.
So when people in our school programs often talk about, well, you know, public transit needs to be improved, but I find they rarely get more specific than that.
Yeah.
Let's get more specific than that.
Well, it needs to be, there's a number of things. If you're interested in public transportation and, like, kind of the ideal situation and one that's actually worked is Curitiba, Brazil. And they just, like, they had this architect who was elected as mayor, and he was just like, we're making this better. but he did it in such a holistic way. And he made the buses more accessible price-wise, because a lot of people in Curitiba were living below the poverty line, so they couldn't afford to get on public transit. But what he did was there was a few options to get bus tokens. You could return your recyclables or collect other people's recyclables. There was something else. Like if you got a bus ticket, you'd get like food stamps or something like that.
Okay.
But there were a ton of different options, so it was incredibly financially accessible to people. And they overhauled the whole like routes or whatever. Here we have like 200 routes. They just made it really simple, really circle. So like there was just one main one in town, like one route that a few buses did. And then it got like a little bit more specific the farther out you went. But anyone who lived in Curitiba could get a bus from their house basically, or from their street to the city center or to another person's house. But they simplified it, made it easier to understand. All the buses are electric. And even the bus stops, they redesigned so that people could like get on and off more efficiently, and they were all accessible by people with physical limitations to like getting up ramps and stuff. So
that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
One thing that bothers me about the buses here, as I mentioned yesterday because I got on the wrong one, is that the routes are illogically designed and presented, because we could have, let's say, a 9B, which has two different routes which take you to two different places.
And one of them is the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like if you stay on the bus, you're going to end up at another shore.
And of course, I mean, the front of the bus says it, but when you're just looking at the bus from the back, all it says is 9B, so it's kind of a gamble.
Yeah, it's also 9A.
Yeah, I just don't know why they don't. I mean, it's talking about urban sprawl. This is a great example of it, because this quote-unquote town/city/municipality hybrid is just all over the place. And the buses have to get from every edge to every edge, so it's difficult for them because we've got the most obscure routes. I just wish for every route they would just pick a different number. Why having two 9Bs? Even just a 9C?
Yeah. But just...
That's my own little rant.
Yeah.
I have here just written down in our notes for this episode, bicycles.
Yeah.
We like those.
Yeah, that project I was working on today, basically every single thing I turned into a rant about bicycles.
You hate them?
No, I love them.
These darn cyclists on the road taking up space.
I love bikes, but I was just like...
They come out every summer.
It was basically like find 3 sustainability issues on campus. And like my original plan was to do one about food, one about buses, one about bikes. But then they all ended up being about bikes, because it was just like there's nowhere to put your bike. There's a street, and half of it has a bike lane, and it's just completely isolated. It's like to get to that street, you have to be weaving around cars, crossing medians, going through lights.
Right. And
you get onto the street, and it's like a little bit of a haven. It's where the university is. But people will pull into the bike lane without looking. And like so many people get hit, or like almost hit, and it drives me insane.
We've been looking at European town design a lot, and they are much more bike-centric, because things are much more close together, and things are more walkable, and towns are designed, kind of randomly, but also more organically. Yeah. Compared to the whole of North America, which is not very walkable or bikeable. Cyclable. Like I always hear on the radio, we live in a bicycle city. I'm like, no, we don't.
No, we don't.
It's not possible.
Yeah, I was so excited to have a space to store my bike.
It's also dangerous.
It's dangerous.
Because cars go so fast here because the way it's designed.
There's a whole bike street. It says no cars. There's cars parked along both sides.
Yeah.
But I love bikes. I think they're a great option because you can get somewhere that would, like I was grabbing about the walk to the gym. I would bike there if I wasn't going to get hit by a car.
Yeah, it also kind of contributes and is a factor of it in North America is that it's a much more obese place, I don't know, like unhealthy place.
That makes sense.
So people aren't biking, and also people can't bike. So that's a two-way thing.
Yeah, but I think bikes are going to be a really major part of the future sustainable city.
Yeah, you were mentioning Curitiba, Brazil for buses. There's a lot of good examples in Europe for bikes. Yeah. In the Netherlands, all over the place. Anyway, moving on. Alternatives, we kind of mentioned. We want some high-speed trains all over the place. Just do that in North America. Get the high-speed trains from here to there. A lot of the rural places will kind of die out a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to have to reduce urban sprawl, I think.
Oh, yeah. So
And with the rural cities or rural towns will need to be a bit more either self-sustaining
right.
or just fewer.
I think both.
Yeah.
Let's make the rural places a little bit more rural again. Let's try and reduce their dependency on.
But I feel like that would make people
places.
more happy if they didn't have to go to the city for a 4-hour
It would definitely
drive.
make me and my family more happy.
Yeah. If you could just go, because you guys, when you moved here, you wanted fresh bread.
Oh yeah, bread.
You couldn't
My parents
find
were
bread.
parents were always raging about bread. They're like, why do we have to drive 45 minutes to get some bread?
Yeah.
Things are rough, but I think they were also complaining about, that's also about grocery store chains, supermarkets, that whole culture.
No, that's what I mean. Like, it would make you more happy if you just had a local baker, local
Of course.
poultry place. I don't know what.
Degrowth.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, it would reduce dependency, which would be awesome.
Yeah.
And it would, because a lot of sustainable visions for the future, which I've seen, and there aren't too many because people tend to just gripe without coming up with any ideas for themselves, myself included. They reduce the, they eliminate the element of choice, which we have currently about where to live. Because I could choose to live in a whole bunch of different places, scaled on their population size, on their how industrialized they are, kind of, even though we were talking about the rural places being quite urban now.
Yeah.
In all but statistics. But a lot of sustainable visions for the future just say, well, this is what cities should look like, and everyone should live there. It's like, but what if someone doesn't want to live in a place like that? What if someone wants to strike out by themselves and live in a more rural place? That's okay. That should be allowed. There should be fewer rural places, I think, because then we wouldn't have to build so many train tracks going all over the place. We could let nature kind of retake its ground a little bit.
Yeah, and there could be rural places, but they're just better for everybody because there'd be better healthcare there, maybe, and
because there'd be fewer of them.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of there still being choice, someone still not being funneled into a city, because I can imagine there's a lot of people now being like, this is the trend, I have to move here for economic needs, for financial needs. It would just be irresponsible for me to stay in a rural place, even though I love it. I'd love it. I would think it would be awesome if they could be two even choices, and not just two, but a whole scale, a whole gradient of them.
Yeah, I agree.
I like that. Anyway, but how do we achieve this infrastructural revolution?
I think it will take pretty strong government intervention or corporate intervention. But at the current state of many of the biggest corporations, none of them have a choice in enforcing sustainability because of the shareholder situation.
The corporations, as with the towns, as with the roads, have grown up in an unsustainable time.
Yes.
And an unsustainable economy. And they've also grown to such a size which is kind of inherently unsustainable.
Yeah.
They need to grow and they need to keep consuming.
Yeah.
So they're kind of these monsters which have been created, which, as they are now, would not exist in a society as we are painting.
Yes.
So big change would be needed for those guys. And that obviously wouldn't come from within because they'd be losing money, or they'd be losing profit, should I say. So that would have to be governmental. We're talking about government and politics. The biggest issue for me is that any kind of massive change like this is going to take more than 4 years.
Yeah.
But right now, that's all any elected party is promised.
Yes.
So this is an issue.
Yeah, that's why I said corporations, because I feel like in our lifetimes, hopefully there'll be corporations rise up that are just out there to make sustainable change, and they can kind of hopefully encourage people who have these like underlying sentiments that they want sustainability, they want degrowth, they have no way of achieving it. They can kind of enable them, get the people to really, really, that's just like all they want, and that'll let governments be able to, no matter who it is in office, be able to make change if that's all the people are focused on.
Right.
But I think it'll take a corporate influence, that's really all I can think of.
But does the big transnational corporation existing, is that itself kind of paradoxical to the idea of degrowth?
It is, but it's like you can't really change the system without working within it.
And the same with big government, right? That
doesn't work in a degrowth society, but it needs to.
Yeah, that's something we both wrote about last year for papers, which is that, and it's kind of a common theme across a lot of degrowth literature, which is that to make these changes, small government, small corporations, small businesses, government is going to have to impose a lot of its big power.
Yeah.
And as all corporations need to be kind of leveraged.
Yeah.
In their own ways. So vote, what's the saying? It's like think local, buy global, or the opposite.
Buy local, think global seems more right, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never heard that saying.
But yeah, buying, thinking, voting.
They don't have to
local.
all be the exact same. But
True.
I had written down for alternatives innovation, and I think what I meant was if we just banned cars, any type of car, it would force people to innovate.
A quick ban.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just no cars in North America.
This kind of thing would happen very quickly, right?
Yeah.
Towns would be rebuilt. Roads would be rebuilt. People would maybe start riding on horseback a lot. That's my dream.
Yeah, that is
I
your
want
dream.
that to happen again. Every time I watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I say, why am I not riding a horse to class?
Yes.
I can't ride a horse, but I would love to learn how.
Yes. Anyway, so that's like a really extreme example, but I think even if there was a slow phase out of cars, people would be forced to innovate so that
I agree, gradually.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't be immediately, but yeah, gradually. Yeah. I like this.
Yeah.
So how to achieve them? Email and send letters to your local elected officials, trying to get them to float a bill, which is reducing the amount of cars on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in your personal life, make hard choices. Maybe say support like public transit, support bike culture.
Well, yeah, bike, but also just think about where you want to live.
Yeah.
Do we want to live in an LA car metropolis stuck in traffic environmentally and socially?
Yeah.
Or do we want to live in a place which makes us feel more human, which connects us with our own 2 feet, makes us feel like bipeds again?
Yeah.
Okay, fun discussion.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I feel like it'll be one we'll pick up again.
Yeah, because we really like the thought of architecture and infrastructure.
Yeah.
Those are topics that we both kind of enjoy and are looking to learn more about.
Yeah, that's the thing with this conversation. Will spark a lot of thoughts. Then we'll do more research, come back and present the research maybe.
Yeah, present it to the podcast in a formal
PowerPoint slide deck.
Yeah. We had an announcement.
Oh, yes. So we are redoing our Instagram. Rebooting, that's the word I was looking for. So there'll be more video content on there.
Yep.
There will be some
more creative content.
Yes.
Some more behind-the-scenes stories.
Yeah, and some more graphic things.
Yeah, while still keeping nature as the center, as the focus. Yes. Still keeping a focus of get off Instagram. We might put that on a t-shirt. I don't know.
Yes, but we're revamping it so that people can go there and learn about the podcast and hopefully be directed here or be directed outside. That's the one of 2 options we want people to do on Instagram.
Yeah, well, just with their lives. Either listen to this or go outside. I think hashtag get off Instagram would be a funny slogan.
Yeah. Whenever we make t-shirts someday, we'll have some funny Instagram things in there maybe.
Okay.
And
where can they find us on Instagram?
Shirts. They can find us at _environmental. We post new episodes every Monday on Spotify, SoundCloud, and Apple Music.
Apple Podcasts.
Sorry.
Yeah, fun episode on cars. See you next week for a topic which we have not yet decided.
Yeah.
And hope you're all having a great day and keep having a great day.
Bye.